All right, everybody, welcome to another video. Sorry for the delay. It's been a busy few weeks or something like that going on there. Haven't had enough time to cut one together, but this video we actually have two stops for you. We went back to Point Gratiot because we wanted to collect some vertical cores there. So there's a little bit of video of what we were doing there. We also grabbed a number of additional hand samples for Scott's statistical work that he's doing. So we had that day there, and then the second day we actually went up to Walnut Creek and made that 2-mile trek up to the contact there. And so that's what we got in store for you for this video, and so let's get right into it. We are back at Point Gratiot, back where we started all this in the first place, and the reason we came back here is because we wanted to collect some vertical cores down through this section. So we're going to start here. We're about, I don't know, a foot or so above the thin gray shale interval that we're interested in. Then we'll have about 6 inches or so of Kalwasser bed to go through, and then we're hoping to get into these gradational black shales that are in the uppermost part of the Hanover down below that, and then some pyrite below it. We weren't initially interested in that unit because it's gradational. We didn't think we'd see these effects of burn down, but some of the results that we're getting back from the initial study suggest to us that the pyrite might be one of the keys to where these metals are concentrated. There's a lot of reworked pyrite at the base of those gradational black shales, so we want to make sure that we sample that as well. I'm just saying, there's a lot of unemployed people out there. If your company is in need of a directional driller, this is your man right here. Yeah, look at that. Yeah. That's unvertical.
Hey Mom, can you introduce yourself and let us know what's going on here?
I'm Nancy Jennings. I'm Scott McCallum's mother and Randy's friend. And my husband Paul's here. We've had a wonderful day on Lake Erie.
And can you tell us a little bit about this lunch that you have here?
Well, we have a quiche.
Standard lunch for Randy and I, really.
And we have some cheese.
Cheeses, of course.
We have gazpacho.
Obviously.
Plates. Cups.
I mean, when you had plates, you already had more than Randy and I have ever had for lunch right there.
We've got a tablecloth, no place to put it.
This is unbelievable. Step up from our usual meals. We're bringing her out with us. I've been coming here for close to 20 years, and this is one of the first times I've ever noticed the pieces of fish here on the top of the Kalwasser. There's another piece there. You can actually see some of the structure. I know it doesn't look like much, but that's actually what these are, fish scales, and this is actually a really good place to find fossilized fish material. Like look at that. Look at the detail on that piece there. Yeah, right there. Pretty incredible stuff here, and I've never noticed this before. There's been some actually really nice big pieces of armored fish found here at this locality in this bed. So this is interesting. Now we're headed up to Walnut Creek, and I have to admit we were really wondering if this was going to work out there. You can see in the videos here that the weather was not at all ideal, but luckily this storm passed just south of us and didn't get into the headwaters, so it actually worked out really well. By the time we got there, the creeks weren't blown out, and the creek wasn't flooding, from rain coming down in the headwaters there. So we really lucked out on this trip. We're able to collect some core, and so here, have a look at what we were doing there, and then I'll show you the core. We got up at 4:30 or 4, depending on who we're talking about, so we get out in the field early, and yeah, this is the weather that we're getting, so this should be really interesting. Just a quick status update there. Our situation has not improved at all. If anything, it's a little bit worse than it was before, so this should be really fun to hike down this slot canyon that we can't get out of, and if the water level comes up really rapidly, this might be the last video you see, or maybe you won't see it because we'll be dead before I make a video out of this. Everybody, so we got a hell of a hike ahead of us here. We're actually, this black shale you see here is the Pipe Creek. This is a lower Kalwasser bed, so this is the start of that upper Devonian mass extinction. So we're standing here on the top of the Angola Shale. There's the Pipe Creek Shale, and then we'll be coming up and walking through the entire section of the Hanover on our hike up to the base of the Dunkirk. Let's get to it. So here we are in the Hanover. You can see these thin black shales coming in here. And actually there's a number of them through this section that there's a magnetic susceptibility study that was done, and you can actually relate these back to orbital forcing mechanisms like Milankovitch cycles. But we'll see a number of them coming up through here. More of these thin black shales in the Hanover that at some point we probably need to look at for their potential for critical minerals, rare earth elements, but that's for another time. We'd rather go to the stuff that's super far away and hard to get to, not the stuff that's right here and easy to find. So Scott just saw this big fracture running up through there, and what we noticed is that there's actually a little bit of offset down here at the bottom. That offset appears to get less and less as it moves up through there. I suspect that that has something to do with ice shove. I don't think it's actually tectonic, but it may be. Not entirely sure. This is a nice big giant outcrop, and it's got to be probably about 50 feet tall with no Dunkirk in sight at the top. So still got a lot of hiking to do. We're about 1.5 miles into this walk and got our first view of the Dunkirk Shale here. So here's coming up into the top of the Hanover, and then you can see the contact with that heavily jointed black shale up above it there. So we're probably, about right now standing about maybe halfway through the Hanover Shale. It's about 30 meters thick, another 15 meters above us, maybe not quite halfway through it there, but then we can see the Dunkirk up there. Here's another nice view of the contact. Big joint right there getting ready to fall down, and we will not be stepping underneath that, that's for sure, not anytime soon. But yeah, there's the contact with the Dunkirk, Hanover. We're getting there. These are some of the massive concretions that come out of the Dunkirk. The weird and interesting thing is that we find them laying in the creeks a lot, but we never actually see them in the outcrop. There is a gray shale interval you can find over on Silver Creek that hosts concretions, but these actually, you can see that they're dark brown, they're black, you can see the laminations on the weathered. Like, these actually come out of the black shales, and we've never actually seen them in the Dunkirk, but they're in the Dunkirk black shale facies, but you always find them laying down here in the creek. So I don't know why that is. I'm sure it has something to do with like when these came out versus how, you know, common they are and erosion rates of the banks and all of that. But they're really impressive to see. Again, the formation of these, it's the same story that we see in the Rhine Street and the Marcellus. It's that anaerobic oxidation of methane, a hiatus and sedimentation that holds that zone, that sulfate methane transition zone steady. And you have the carbon dioxide and methane that's coming up from at depth, mixing with calcium coming out of seawater, precipitates calcite and forms these concretions here very early on. Like you can actually see depositional of thicknesses here in the laminae. And a matter of fact, you can trace these out into the shale where it's compacted, and you can actually calculate mechanical compaction strain. So the total strain, mechanical compaction strain on the Dunkirk was about 56% there. So a 56% reduction in thickness as a result of mechanical compaction with these rocks here. And we deduced that from tracing laminae that we can follow from these concretions out into the fissile host shale and looking at the thickness here relative to the thickness in the shale. That's so awesome. There they are, the big concretions in the Dunkirk. They're so hard to find, but there's two of them right there. There's actually another smaller one right over here, and there I see another one there. This is great. They're so hard to find. You usually don't find them. Yeah, there they are. Here's the section that we're interested in coring. You can see the Kalwasser bed right there, and if you look along, you can see there's at least one or two other black shales that are in there as well. So we're excited to get up to this contact and get coring. This has been a productive walk so far. Oh, we're getting there now. It's a beautiful site. That's a pretty stellar shot of the contact right there between the gray shale, gray dominated shales of the Hanover and the black shale dominated Dunkirk shale. So this is really neat section here. This is one of these real big north-south fractures here. And you can see it's well defined, it's very straight, but notice where it goes up into the wall, it stops at the base of the black shale. There, it doesn't continue up in. And what we think that these were probably the result of a structurally hinged forebulge. You know, maybe located on like the Cincinnati Arch and the Clarendon-Linden fault system that's to the east of here. And so you ended up getting this little bit of warping, and the black shales probably acted as a seal to fluids. So you build this fluid pressure up underneath, and then you end up generating these big north-south fractures at the bases of these black shales and the gray shale sections. But what's really neat too is if you look at these fractures here, they're kind of wobbly, and down there they're parallel to the stream. They're likely some sort of unloading fracture. But if you look out like down past that log, you can see them start to curve and come in perpendicular to this fracture face. You can really see it over there on that one where they're coming in. And so what that tells you is that at the time these fractures formed, this fracture already existed and it was open. So when it's open, it has to contain two of the three principal stresses. So there's one oriented this way, another one oriented parallel to it, and therefore by definition the third one has to be perpendicular to it. So with this fracture being opened, you get a stress shadow or stress reduction shadow where it's influencing the localized stress field around this open fracture, and these fractures here are feeling that as they're growing and they're coming into this. They start feeling that reorientation of the stress field and start curving in this case perpendicular. You also see some that curve in parallel to them, but more commonly you see them curving in perpendicular. So that's what's going on there, and that's one of the ways we know that you can't transmit the stress across an open surface, and these come in and abut this fracture. So that's how we know that these fractures are younger than this north-south fracture, and that's how we've done the same up here when you see these east-northeast and northwest fractures. It's using those same types of abutting relationships to work out the timing of those joints as well. But so just to be clear, there's fractures, and there's fractures. So here's a mode 1 crack that's a result of probably some sort of warping and fluid pressure accumulating at the bases of these black shales. You look up in there, and the black shale is full of mode 1 cracks that are the result of hydrocarbon generation. And then you look here in the floor, and you have mode 1 cracks that are the result of unloading of this creek as it's eroded down through post-glaciation. So we don't want to just say, oh, there's fractures and this is how these fractures are formed. There you have 3 different driving mechanisms for fractures right here, all within a stone's throw. The contact and the beds we're interested in are actually visible right below the bridges there of I-90. Scott pointed out we have this nice peaceful 2-mile walk through the woods only to work right underneath this incredibly busy expressway. So sorry if you can't hear us.
There's a tractor.
But so those are the beds we're interested in. So we're actually a ways up above them here, not a ways, but again, we want to get some of this upper Dunkirk on top of it. So we got this nice platform here that we're going to be able to core down through to get some continuous black shale to Dunkirk. We'll core through the gray shale interval, down through the Kalwasser bed, and then try and pick up that black shale bed that's below the Kalwasser in the Hanover. So that's the plan. We're gonna get to it here. So we'd like to thank Scott's stepdad Paul for rigging up these much more heavy-duty cables and alligator clips. After about 1 day of using this, I'd already nearly broken one of these clips, so he put these things on, and man, they work like a charm. Just no questions asked, there it goes. So yeah, thanks a lot, Paul. All right, so here's the core we collected on Walnut Creek. So the top's up here, and then so this is all Dunkirk shale coming down through this interval here. There's a nice zone of pyrite right there. There's another one right there. And then here's the base of the continuous black shale, which is interesting because at this locality, it's only a couple centimeters thick right here, this gray shale. But if we work down the wall just a bit, like 150 yards or so, this is 11 centimeters thick there, so it's a lot thicker. Then we're into the first black shale here, which is pretty thick, very similar to what we saw in Rosebrook Gorge. Another interesting aspect is there's minimal pyrite development at the base of this, but again, down on the gorge wall, there's actually a pretty significant ½ centimeter or so thick pyrite bed at the base of this black shale. Then we get into these dark gray shale facies below there until we run into another thin black shale here, and you can see it right across here, but there's actually a detrital pyrite lag at the base of this thin little black shale. We come down through more gray shale here, and then we see this black shale here that has all this nodular pyrite in it. And this is really interesting to me because I've actually, going back through all the cores, with the exception of the Point Gratiot core, where it's only you know, a few centimeters thick, I can find this bed in all the cores we've cut so far. So Beaver Creek, Scott Creek, now Walnut Creek, and then Rosebrook Golf Course. So it's just this thin black shale that has a lot of these pyrite nodules in there. So that seems like that might end up being a key marker bed as we continue to work our way to the east and track this stuff around. We got a bit more gray shale, and then we come up here and coming down through this gray shale until we hit another black shale right here. Slightly bioturbated, but relatively sharp top here that's got a little cracked. I got to put it back together. Again, back into gray shale, we got some carbonate nodules in here, and then we get into this a little bit of darker stuff before we finally hit the Kellwasser bed here. Coming down through the Kellwasser bed into gray shales, and then these are those transitional black shales that we've been seeing all along through this area as well. Dark black shale down here at the bottom with the pyrite filled burrows beneath there. All right, everybody, well, I think that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for sticking it out to the end. Again, just want to take a quick second to thank everybody that's helping us out with this project. Again, CGS Mule for providing us with these core boxes. I mean, they've been great to have and be able to really look at these cores in more detail and see what's really going on there. Thanks to Chemostrat for all the help with powderizing these samples for us and running a few analyses for us as well. And thanks to the USGS as well for also doing a lot of the analytical work for us. So with that, you know, we'll see you next time. We got more creeks to hit there. We got more of the summer left to get out there and do it. So hopefully here with all these rains we've been having, that'll end here. The creek levels will come down. We can get back out there and get some more samples. All right, guys, have a good one.